Good evening, this is Mr. Wintermelon. As promised, we are going to discuss about transpiration as well as transpiration pool, because you will need to understand what is transpiration first before you can appreciate transpiration pool. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to define transpiration as well as explain the movement of water molecules between plant cell and between the environment in terms of water potential. And lastly, describe and explain how wilting occurs. And lastly, describe and explain how wilting occurs, because this is very much related to transpiration. So for transpiration, the definition is transpiration is the process involving the loss of water from a plant through the stomata. Water molecules will move out of the mesophyll cells by osmosis, forming a thin layer of moist, as shown in the diagram. Water will evaporate and accumulate in the air. Water vapor molecules will then diffuse out from the stomata into the surrounding. So this is how transpiration takes place. First, movement of water molecules out, forming a thin layer of moist through osmosis. Second, the water will evaporate. And third, the water vapor molecules will diffuse out from the stomata. So this is how water is lost from the leaf. And just to summarize, there are 3 steps. First is the osmosis of water out from the mesophyll cell, forming a thin layer of moist. This layer of water will evaporate. Then the water vapor molecules will diffuse out from the leaf. And this process is known as transpiration, the diffusing out of water vapor molecules. So once you understand this concept, it should not be difficult for you to understand why the water potential inside the mesophyll cell will decrease due to transpiration. So transpiration will lead to osmosis of water molecules from the xylem vessel to the neighboring cell, because the water in the neighboring cells just move out through osmosis, forming the thin layer of moist. The decrease in water potential in the xylem vessel will result in a suction force which will pull the water up the xylem vessel. So this suction force is known as transpiration pull. So to help demonstrate transpiration pull, I have these 5 bottles down here. So this 5 bottles is used to represent plant cell. First is the mesophyll cell. Then we have the xylem inside the leaf, which is beside the mesophyll cell and supply the mesophyll cell with water. Then we have the xylem inside the stem, xylem inside the root, as well as root hair cell. So these 5 cells are kind of interconnected to each other. Of course, there are a lot of xylem in the leaf cells. There are also a lot of xylem cells inside the stem, but they are connected one after another. So I have the mesophyll cell over here, and let there be light. In the presence of sunlight, the plant will undergo photosynthesis and the stomata will open. And when this happens, water molecules inside the mesophyll cell will move out from the mesophyll cell, forming a thin layer of moist through osmosis. Eventually, the thin layer of moist will evaporate and the water will become water vapor inside the airspace of the leaf. So as the concentration inside the airspace of the leaf is higher than the water vapor concentration outside the leaf, the water vapor molecules will move out of the leaf through diffusion. And this process of water diffusing out from the stomata is called transpiration. So as transpiration occurs, you can see that the water potential of the mesophyll cell actually decrease. Now, we can see that the water potential inside the mesophyll cell has decreased due to transpiration. So what will happen to the water in the xylem of the leaf? So as the water potential inside the xylem of the leaf is higher than the water potential inside the mesophyll cell, what will happen is water will move into the mesophyll cell through osmosis. So now that the water potential in the xylem of the leaf have decreased, what will happen? The water in the mesophyll cell will continue to move out through osmosis, forming a thin layer of moist. So it is up to the water in the xylem of the stem to move into the xylem of the leaf through osmosis, from a region of higher water potential to a region of lower water potential. And this movement of water is known as transpiration pool. So now that the water potential inside the xylem of the stem have decreased, what will happen next? It will be filled up by the xylem of the root. So water inside the xylem of the root will move into the xylem of the stem through osmosis, because the water potential inside the xylem of the root is higher than that of the stem. Now that the water potential inside the xylem of the root have decreased, it is up to the root hair cell to fill the xylem of the root with water. So water will move into the xylem of the root through osmosis. So now that the water potential in the root hair cell has decreased, water molecules from the soil will enter the root hair cell through osmosis. So this is how water get sucked in or absorbed by the root hair cell to the xylem in the root, to the xylem in the stem, and to the xylem in the leaf, and finally to the mesophyll cell. Hence, water will move from the root through the stem and finally to the leaves, forming a continuous flowing stream. And this stream is known as transpiration stream. The cohesion force between the water molecules due to their hydrogen bond will help to pull or suck each other up the transpiration stream as the water evaporates. So in summary, inside the leaf, water is drawn to the mesophyll cell from the xylem vessel after transpiration, because the water potential in the mesophyll cell has decreased. The reduction in water potential in the xylem vessel causes transpiration pool, which is aided by the capillary action. So this happens in the stem of the plant. This will in turn pull the water up from the root xylem, resulting in root pressure because the water potential has decreased. This will help in the diffusion and osmosis of mineral salt as well as water molecules into the root. So why is transpiration important? Transpiration causes the water and mineral salt to be pulled up from the root to the stem and finally to the leaves. Water is needed for photosynthesis and maintaining the turgidity of the cell, and this will prevent wilting of plant. Transpiration will also help to cool the plant, similar to how our sweat cools our body. However, just because wilting seems or look bad on the plant doesn't mean that wilting is a bad thing. Wilting occurs as some sort of homeostasis of the plant. So wilting has its importance. So please copy down this as well. Wilting occurs when the water loss is more than the water gain. So O-level they might ask, what is wilting? And you can answer, wilting is when the plant is losing more water than it is absorbing or gaining. But like I said, even though it looks bad, there are some advantage to wilting because it is not dying. Wilting will reduce the surface area exposed to the sunlight as well as reduce the heat gain because the plant do not want to gain more heat to increase the rate of water loss. This will also cause the gut cell to become flaccid, hence it will close the stomata to prevent further loss of water. Then you might ask, then how does it proceed to photosynthesize? Now, it is important to take note that water is an important component or raw material for photosynthesis. So if you are losing more water than you are gaining, maybe you should not be using the water that you have left for photosynthesis. So closing the stomata is actually a good choice because why bother about making food when you are dying? You need to keep yourself alive. But the disadvantage is, like I said, it will reduce the rate of photosynthesis due to the reduce in water uptake. Since there's a reduce in transpiration, there's a reduce or reduction in transpiration pool. We also cannot take in carbon dioxide, as well as the sunlight absorbed will be reduced since the leaf will have reduced surface area. And this will be all for this lesson. In the next lesson, you will learn about the factor which affect the rate of transpiration.